Unit School District 308 Public Forum. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Baumann,
Here.
Mrs. Doyle,
Here?
Mrs. Kroner,
Here.
Mr. Lightfoot,
Present.
Ms. Morgan,
Here.
Mrs. Moyer,
Here.
Mrs. Swanson.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move first with item 2.1, public comment. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to thank the public for attending tonight's meeting. We value the feedback we receive from our residents and encourage everyone to take an active interest in their public school system. Individuals interested in speaking to the board this evening are asked to have completed a comment card and presented it to the secretary to the board. There are two opportunities for members of the public to engage with the Board of Education this evening. The first will be during this public comment, which is similar to the public comment portion of every regular school board meeting, where board members do not respond to the comments made by members of the public. The second opportunity will be during the public forum, at which time members of the Board of Education will respond to your questions. If you have signed up to speak during public comment, when the secretary calls your name, I ask that you come to the microphone, state your name for the public record, and provide your feedback. Please note that comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and I think for a maximum of 60 minutes. No discussion of personnel matters, including names or specific job titles or responses to questions are permitted. We will alternate comments submitted in person and by email. If we do not get to your public comment within the time allotted, you are invited to share your comment in writing for the school board to read after the meeting. Thank you.
First one is an email, Audrey Staupel.
I am a mother of 2 elementary students and a nurse. Upon hearing the proposed Phase 3 plans for our district, I am very disheartened and appalled at the lack of care for our children's education in the district. Keeping this same elementary half-day school plan and even to add another morning of in-school instruction on Wednesdays is not enough. There is no reason to keep these children home, as all of the school district staff members that want to be vaccinated have been. Therefore, it is not a safety concern for the teachers and staff having these children in school for a full day. Secondly, there has not been a spike in child-to-child cases since reopening, and in fact, a decrease in the number of COVID cases district-wide. As a nurse, I am not worried about my children getting COVID by going to school, as they mask, wash hands, and socially distance as recommended and able to. If parents are concerned for their children's possible COVID exposure from attending, they can choose the remote by choice learning option. However, as you have seen in rolling out the Phase 2 plan, almost 70% of parents want their children in the classroom. That does not mean part-time. It is a clear sign that the parents of this district want their children in school all day. It is embarrassing and disappointing to have our children have less than 3 hours of instruction per day, then 1 to 2 specials in the afternoon with very little classwork for home. We have done our part. The teachers have done theirs. Now it is your turn to do what is right. These children deserve this. There is no health reason to keep these children home for half of the day. Many districts surrounding us and across the state are full day with lunch, and they have not had worrisome issues. As they are in elementary school, they already have their desks spaced out and can eat in the classroom. If it is a larger class and cannot keep 6 feet distance between the desks, then utilize the multi-purpose rooms or cafeteria to space those children out. So figure it out. Is it possible and needs to be done? As for the remote by choice children, it is their choice to be home and no longer a COVID risk to be at school. Therefore, if they need to have a change in teachers or add a remote by choice only teacher to finish the year, then that needs to be done or figured out and not have the rest of the 60 to 70% of children suffer because, as you stated previously for Phase 2 rollout, you don't want children to switch teachers from who they started the year with. That is a ridiculous excuse, and these children are resilient, and the plan and schedule has changed already so many times this year, they will recover. What will be more difficult to recover is the learning loss occurring. What will be worse if having the majority of children behind because you are not willing to figure it out, because you don't want to spend the money to get these kids back in the classroom full-time. We are all ready, as you can see by the parents' surveys of choosing in-school instruction. So I am pleading to amend the Phase 3 to add full-time for elementary school as well and allow the parents to choose from there. What is also disappointing is you don't want to spend the money and resources now, but you are willing to plan an entire school curriculum for summer school with federal funds for those students affected by pandemic learning loss. So you would use $500,000 for summer school through a grant, but won't help prevent learning loss by bringing children back full-time. As a taxpayer in one of the highest tax zip codes in the state, I am so disheartened by your lack of care to get these children the education they need and deserve. As a mother, I am sad I have to supplement their education for what the district is lacking due to limited time for instruction. Thankfully, their teachers are great in the short time they have with them. I cannot imagine how junior high and high school parents feel learning advanced concepts remotely and/or in 30-minute increments at the high school level. As a healthcare worker, I am frustrated that you as a board are not looking at the evidence and trusting the science with the vaccine. When you see test scores plummet next year, children way behind, and outraged teachers and parents, you would have wished you sent them back sooner. Again, we have all done our part. You do yours. Sincerely, Audrey Stoppel.
Michelle Klein.
Hi. While there are many children doing fantastic, there are also many children in our district that are struggling with remote learning, including mine. Imagine coming out of a 2-week-long mental health hospital stay a few days before the pandemic lockdown started last month. No visitors because of COVID, newly put on meds and regulating meds, learning new ways to manage in just normal social life skills in normal school, and then bam. That is my 8th grade son. He is currently failing 5 classes again this semester. He is that black screen to his teachers. My youngest daughter is in 2nd grade. In the 2019-2020 school year, I was witnessing her finally thriving and slowly watched that deteriorate through online learning. She struggles with doing assignments on the computer, so she is constantly shutting down, losing interest and motivation. I am thankful that we have Phase 2 option. With more days, I am now seeing her reading improving at least. She almost became just another black screen. Early data from a landmark National Institute of Health, NIH, study that began in 2018 indicates that children who spent more than 2 hours a day on screen time activities scored lower on language and thinking tests, and some children with more than 7 hours a day of screen time experience thinning of the brain's cortex in the area of the brain related to critical thinking and reasoning. There are epileptic children in our district having increased seizures during class due to all the screen time. Seizures can cause death, and we're all well aware of that. While I understand that even though the teachers are doing their best and constantly trying to create an engaging and interactive learning environment, there's a lack of social interaction and in-person connection. I'm lucky enough that I am able to stay home. I can only imagine the struggle of others that are not as fortunate. We know many have even had to withdraw from the district to make it work so they can still pay the bills. It's damaging to an already struggling relationship between parents and children. It's heartbreaking to watch your children become a shell of who they once were. The fact that school has been closed for almost a year with no plan in place to reopen is a huge, huge concern. There needs to be a common ground where those that want to stay with remote learning should, but those children that are falling behind, the black screen kids, can physically attend school where they will be able to once again excel. These children are struggling and slipping through the cracks and deserve a better option. With some more out-of-the-box thinking and support from our district leaders, parents, teachers, and even students, I know there are better choices to be made for all who are struggling. Thank you for giving my family a platform to have a voice.
Carrie Dorigati is the next email, and Crystal Casper is the next in-person that could go to the microphone, please.
I have done a significant amount of research from back in October where the board discussed the metrics for the phased plan. I am questioning how we as a district can be so far away from the path you all laid out back then. Our rolling average is currently 4.72%, which actually, from your phase metrics, gets us to phase 4. Our district continues to fall on the easily accessible COVID excuses to hide the actual reason for keeping our children behind almost every other district in the state. In quotes, mismanagement of financial responsibilities. We as a district are supposed to be the advocates for our children. The metrics that were set by the board are only useful if they are executed on. We have now offered vaccinations for every teacher in our district for the safety of staff and students. There is a reason the state decided to prioritize the teachers. That reason was to get our children back into the buildings. How do you warrant the lack of progression? How do you warrant offering 10 hours of in-person instruction as enough when your entire district has been offered vaccinations? How do you warrant keeping a 2-day-a-week schedule when your dashboard clearly shows a 0.002% COVID positivity rate? How do you warrant any of this? We are in no way championing the fight for our children and their educational and emotional growth. I am disheartened and alarmed at the lack of actionable passion to get our children back in the buildings. As a district, your financial problems are coming at the cost of educational development. Pull up your documents you made to support and defend your actions and plans back in October and explain how anyone on the board cannot approve 5 days a week instruction. There is no information or data that warrants or defends the lack of in-person time we are currently at. The documents are hidden so far into the notes, I'm sure it can be hard to find. However, as a parent that is concerned about the support that our children are seeing from the district, I had to take the time to dig to find it. After I did find the documents, it just validated that the board is not following the phases that were set up. Poor planning and financial issues are at the root of the decision-making, and that is an injustice to each and every child as well as parent in this district. I would love to hear someone explain and defend a different rationale for the lack of in-person time. I truly hope that a vote can be decided on that support the children and the evident needs of an in-person time. Thank you for your time and consideration. Terry Strickland.
Hi, my name is Crystal Casper. I'm the parent of a child who's a freshman at Oswego East, and I am here for 5 days a week in person. This is mostly aimed at for Faith Dahlquist and the admin, not really the board, but so during the last board meeting on February 22nd, admin recommended Plan B for high school, which is 2 full days and includes eating at school. Only 60% on average are doing in person, so this decreases the population of the school and should allow for more kids in person. Some classes right now have only a handful of kids. My son he's the only child in his class. That is a waste of teacher's time. It's a complete waste. Under the current plan, high school kids are in a study room for their lunch period. If Plan B is approved, they'll be eating lunch at school. Why can't they just eat in these rooms? They can bring their sack lunch, and there's no need for you to open the cafeteria. And then here's a couple little statistics for you. The WHO and the American Academy of Pediatrics, along with many other medical professionals, have changed their stance to say that 3 feet is safe. So why can't we combine A and B and allow more in person? As of February 25th, 2.5 million vaccines have been administered in Illinois. That's 1 in 20. The positivity rate of the whole state of Illinois is 2.06. Cases have been declining and holding stable now. Our teachers have received the vaccinations as well. Why wasn't the initial plan set so we can move smoothly into full-time while still offering remote? This should have been in place at the beginning of the school year. It's almost as if no one expected we would ever go back to school in the 2021 school year. Now that there are so many people coming forward wanting more in person, the admin is scrambling to make this happen. School District 308 is failing our community. I respectfully ask that you bring our kids back into school 5 days a week. No more excuses.
Hey, can I also respectfully ask that when you guys come up to the mic, because you have other people coming up behind you, you keep your masks up over your nose?
My glasses will fall
Thank you.
off.
I understand.
So that is their third comment on 5 days a week. All other comments regarding 5 days a week will get moved to after we've gone through the other topics. And the intention is to be able to cover each of them.
The next one is Plank, from the staff at Plank Junior High. And the next person on the microphone will be Dominique Castillo.
Not yet, in just a second.
I didn't say anything. No.
Oh, that was the other one.
On behalf of Plank Junior High School teaching staff, we have concerns regarding recommended Phase 3 plans of reopening. In addition to the pros and cons presented by the district to the board and the lack of them generated versus actually shared that made it sound like teacher support option B, we request that our staff expertise and perspective be considered in planning for Phase 3. We are asking that we stay the course with the Phase 2 school day schedule and only alter within that current structure. The repeated changes to schedules are placing more stress on students, families, and teachers, not to mention other departments in the district by having them make constant changes to their delivery. Teachers and other staff are continuing to reconfigure their services. While all parties involved are doing an exceptional job meeting the constant new demands, this does not mean it isn't impacting their physical, mental, and emotional health. Teachers are experiencing an unprecedented level of burnout, and while some are fine, many are struggling. If the adults teaching the kids are struggling, how can we properly ensure that the kids are thriving? In addition, many students are currently struggling with an extensive amount of screen time, and the thought of potentially extending that screen time as proposed in Phase 3 is not advisable. We do not support schedule options that extend screen time for students. We do not support students taking their masks off for eating lunch throughout the building and in classrooms. We do not support making more drastic changes to the current schedule, especially changes that eliminate student support time. We would like the following considerations to be reviewed. Remain in our current schedule of being in school from 8:05 to 1:05 with student support time until 3 o'clock, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, with Wednesday being a remote go-live day. We strongly recommend keeping student support time. This has been a critical component to the success of many students. Phase 3 options that omit student support time are not supported by Plank teachers. Finally, we put forward the option for building administrators to have the autonomy to increase days for special populations. For example, 504, IEP, SEL, and struggling learners on a case-by-case basis. These students could attend 4 days a week instead of just 2 days, if it better meets their learning needs. This could increase the students' contact time with staff and any related services they may need in order to be successful. We appreciate the district and the Board of Education wanting to continue to offer new options to the community, but we respectfully ask that you take this request seriously and into consideration. We want to teach students in a manner that meets students' needs in a safe environment for all parties involved. We do not support students removing masks for any period of time. With the updated CDC guidelines being released and supporting keeping students in cohorts when possible, social distancing being a priority, and wearing masks at all times, we feel the refinement of Phase 2 as opposed to a complete change to a new Phase 3 better meets these updated guidelines. We request the focus on making changes shift. Please keep us in our current school schedule and start planning instead for next year. Thank you for your consideration, Plank Junior High staff.
If you're coming up to speak public comment and your topic is regarding 5 days a week, I'll ask that you pass till we receive 3 comments on each topic. So Dominique, would you like to be moved? Yep. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Palatine, the co-president of the Oswego Education Association. Tonight, the Board of Education has yet another decision to make about in-person learning. For a year now, the important decisions that have been made have been difficult, and individual viewpoints have only expanded. The common thread is that everyone wants what they feel is best for our students, their education, and our communities. Teachers are happy to be back in person, and the joy of seeing our students in the classroom has been wonderful. Teachers want nothing more than to safely return to in-person learning for everyone. Teachers support the essential actions to help keep schools open, including the consistent implementation of universal mask wearing, physical distancing, hand washing, keeping our facilities clean, and contact tracing. Following these measures consistently, along with proper student schedules, will help keep our students and staff safe, while also helping keep our buildings open. Remote learning is an option for families, and teachers want to ensure that all students, groups A, B, C, and D, get equal educational opportunities. Not every family can or will send their students back for in-person learning due to personal circumstances or safety concerns. It is of greatest importance that those students who are remote be considered when making planning decisions to ensure that they get the same learning opportunities as their in-person peers. Being able to interact and not just stream, burning out through Zoom fatigue, and having opportunities during the day for small group student support are just a few of these important considerations. There are going to be benefits and drawbacks to any plan that is being considered in this difficult environment, but we trust that you will carefully consider the best option for all students when you take your vote tonight. Each student deserves to be in the safest learning environment possible and have an equal opportunity to a quality education. Thank you.
Nikki Rivera.
Hello, 308 Board of Education. I have 2 high school kids. These students need consistency, and to be in school, it's essential. Research shows schools are not a main spread. Currently, the percentage of COVID positivity is low. Some schools have been in school full-time with no major spread and doing well with precautions. Also, many teachers have gotten the vaccine, which should help support the cause to be back in school more often. I support Phase 3, Plan A. Kids need consistency, not more screen time. My kid has ADHD, 504 plan, and the other one is on an IEP. Remote learning is not a good option for them. Phase 3 plans are terrible options, but going at least 4 days a week is more consistent than 2 days spread apart by 6 days. And in Plan B, that is just too much screen time for general kids, let alone kids that have ADHD and IEP issues. Also, these plans don't allow 504 and IEP resource kids to be in school more, which is wrong. This is why there are accommodations, and this should be an exception. Kids are having more mental issues, anxiety, and depression. This is also a health crisis as well and should be taken in consideration and a reason to get kids back in person at school more often. Teachers are essential workers, just like me as a healthcare worker. I treat COVID patients and stay safe. Teachers and students can be safe, and the state guidelines have given you more room to allow this. Let's get back to the business of better education for our kids, because we can do it and stay safe. We need to try. Kids need to be the top priority now, and families need to do what is best for them. I will sign a waiver. You need to give parents the choice.
We have one more for Plan A, second.
That was-
Okay. Tim Casper.
I'm on the 5-day a week.
5 day.
Okay. Thomas Naninga.
I'm not for 5 days, I'm for mental health for our children. My name is Tom Nangate. I have 3 children. One's already gone through the system here and actually was the first kid to go to this school when it opened. I now have a sophomore at Oswego, and I have a 5th grader at Lakewood Creek. And I'm going to apologize before I go on any further if I get emotional, because mental health of our kids is a real thing, and they are suffering right now with staying at home and trying to do chemistry from their screen. Yes, my daughter is one of those black screens. Yes, my daughter had to have a doctor call into the school to make sure she could turn her camera off because the anxiety she feels by sitting there and feeling stupid. Last year, she was in high honors, all A's, including honors classes. This year, she's got F's, she's got D's. It's horrible. My 11-year-old is the most social kid in the world. I've seen him gain 15 to 20 pounds this year, and all he does is stay in his room all day long. These kids need to be back in school. And as far as COVID is concerned, our pediatrician says that if any of the adults in our family get COVID, expose our kids because this will not harm them. Get it out of the way. So it's just, I'm sorry, I'm upset, but living has become a real hell in our household with my two kids suffering through what they're going through right now.
March Grease is the next email.
Do you have March Grease?
John Beeler is another one for secondary A.
Yeah. Oh, I have March Grease, but it's labeled 7. You had one before that.
But it's on the same.
My son is a senior and my daughter is a freshman at OHS, currently doing hybrid school. I asked the board votes for the Plan A that was discussed, which would increase in-school learning and therefore decrease remote learning. The Plan B option only means that children will be in their bedrooms on their computers for even more hours and will indicate that this board has made no meaningful accomplishment for the entire year. Listening to the recent meeting, I was glad to hear one board member state that the goal should be for all students to be at school 5 days per week, and Plan A at least makes an attempt at this. On the other hand, it was disturbing to hear one board member from last month's meeting believe that the school should remain closed through the end of the year. Since this board made the decision to keep our schools closed to in-person learning all of first semester, they should be interested in discovering the negative impacts on thousands of school-aged children in Oswego. I am asking for a response from the superintendent or any board member if data has been requested from the Oswego Police Department or from the Kendall County Health Department. Before making any decision to keep children at home for more hours, the board needs to present real numbers on cases of child neglect, criminal activity, drug, alcohol abuse, mental illness, and suicide attempts as compared to 2019. During last month's meeting, at least one board member found that it was funny that young children are not learning how to tie their shoes. How funny is it for teenagers to be started on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications due to your decisions? The board mentioned 16 cases of coronavirus among school-aged children. Therefore, the board needs to share data on the severity of these cases. Were these children hospitalized, or were they all asymptomatic or with mild illness? What were the ages and what number of these children were doing hybrid versus remote-only school? The board should finally acknowledge that this virus has almost no significant effect on children and feel free to ask why this is so. Instead, your decision has been to isolate 18,000 children in their bedrooms in order to prevent illness that is similar to a common cold. Know that the parents who decided to send their children to school last month have already accepted this minimal risk, and then you need to assume that every one of these parents wants their child to be at school every single day. But for now, Plan A will have to be good enough. John Paul Daler.
Jason Misenko's top remote learning attendance.
Good evening, everybody. I appreciate the chance to speak tonight. My name is Jason Misenko. Thanks for all the hard work that you guys have done. I know that this has been a tremendously difficult situation, but to get on with my point, on the eve of Thanksgiving, there was a email sent out to the districts, and in that email it quoted the great and late John Lewis, the civil rights icon. And I believe the quote from that email was, "When you don't see something right, You gotta stand up. Hashtag log off. Hashtag sit in. My son is in kindergarten and he received 2 letters of truancy because I refused to log him on Wednesdays because attendance for that day was answer the question of the day, poof, you're all set. I refuse to be that button pusher. I'm not going to lie and be a liar about attendance. When I got the second letter of truancy, I made some phone calls and my wife made some phone calls too. And the 5th day of in-person learning was added to my son's schedule within 36 hours. My wife and I can't help but believe that we were a part of that. So I've been racking my brain for months after reading about John Lewis and how he would like to do old-fashioned sit-ins. And so what I'm proposing tonight is that if you truly believe that remote learning is no good, log your children off on Wednesdays, please. Do not participate in this anymore. Do not call your children in absent. But don't skip out on your child's education, and I'm not virtual signaling. Do what you've already been doing. Just don't log in. Attendance matters to the school district, and we must have some currency to make leverage to get our children back in school for full-day education.
Now it's March Grease.
Picking a new category. Dear SD308 board members, I am writing you to ask you to strongly consider voting to support Plan B for the high school students as we move into Phase 3 of learning this school year. The administration has presented you with 2 plans that will get us to the end of an academic year that has been full of many challenges for all of us. As you have moved from phase to phase in an attempt to slowly get our students back into the school setting, one thing has unfortunately been true for the high school students. Each phase has slowly taken away instructional minutes from each and every one of their individual classes per day. While the addition of a 5th live day of instruction during this current phase has given our students the most amount of time in their classes per week since the beginning of the school year, a transition to Plan B to finish out the school year would finally allow our students to receive a full day's worth of instructional time each day and receive the most amount of time in each of their individual classes that they have received to date. When school started this year, students received 40 minutes per class 4 times a week. When school moved to the first hybrid plan, they then had classes reduced to 35 minutes per class 4 times a week. While Phase 2 reduced class times down to even further to 33 minutes per class, live sessions were increased to 5 times a week, thereby increasing individual instruction time per class to 165 minutes a week for an academic year record. Implementing Plan B and going with a full-day schedule would allow students to receive 45 minutes per class 5 times a week for a total of 225 minutes of instructional time per week. A move to Plan B would give our students a whole 60 minutes more class time in each and every one of their subjects to have more time to learn and bridge the gaps on things that might have been missing during the entire first semester when instructional time was way down. In times when parents have concerns about their children failing and being left behind due to the craziness of this year, Plan B provides a way to make up some of the educational time that has sorely been missing. Additionally, Plan B allows the district to continue to follow the successful hybrid plan that has been working since Phase 2 for high school students began. To date, there have not been any COVID-19 outbreaks at the high school and no reason to shut down the schools. One can only assume that this is due to the proper use of masking and social distancing in the schools. In their most recent recommendation for the safe reopening of schools dated February 11th, 2021, the CDC was still saying proper social distancing is a must. Given the success the district has had in doing so, Plan B is the only plan that provides for the continuation of such social distancing. For all the reasons stated above, I would ask you all to strongly consider voting for Plan B for all high school students for Phase 3 of school reopening. This plan has already demonstrated that it can safely be implemented by the district, and it will allow our students access to very much needed additional instructional minutes for the remainder of the year. This is something that will help all students bridge the gap as we transition into next year and help make up critical learning time that was missing during the first semester of this year.
Kara Bates, about safety in the school setting.
Is this regarding 5 days a week? Okay, then we'll put it till we've had a chance to go through the rest.
That's all I have left.
Is that it?
there.
Okay. I have
They're all about.
one more
5
email for Plan A. Do you have?
Hi, I'm Gwen Daler, a freshman at OHS, and I have a few concerns for the way that Phase 3 is going to play out. This is my first year of high school, and along with that, my brother is in his last year of high school. Our school years have been ruined entirely. And I know you're all aware of this, but I do not think you understand how much we need school, not just to learn. The friendships and interactions we make at school are so important for our overall success in life. That has already been taken away from us for so long. Things have to become normal at some point, and it is really disappointing that the people left to advocate for us are not pushing for having groups A and B together 4 days a week. I understand that there are health concerns because of the amount of people and how crowded it may be. If students or parents do not feel comfortable, then they can choose to stay home. Ask any high school student, and most will say that they miss normal school. Doing option A is the most normal we can get right now. At this point, we will take anything. My giant classrooms are now filled with 10 people at max. My smallest class is 4. How is that a good learning environment? I might as well stay home. It's not just a struggle for the students. The teachers have it just as hard. It hurts to see the best teachers struggle because they have to teach half online, half in school. Basically, they are teaching 2 classes at one time. They are trying their best always, but if the first option was in place, it would be much easier. Even some of my own teachers have said to students that being closer to normal would be nicer than what is in place currently. Mental health of the students should be the main focus. In the past, school was already one of the main sources of student stress, but now it is even worse. Sitting in one's room every day doing the same thing becomes mentally draining. Going to school, even for the smallest 2 days a week, is better. It could be so much better. According to research done by South University, they found that individuals who participated in social or community activities were more likely to report good or very good health. The positive interactions at school are so necessary, and this year proves that. All students are done trying to learn part on screen and part in person. Having more in-person time will benefit all, especially those with rough home situations. I think those are the students that need in-person the most. Getting away from a toxic or sometimes abusive environment is the best thing a kid can do, even if it is just for 5 hours a day, 4 days a week. School is a safe place for so many people, and it has been pretty much gone for way too long. Please make the right decision for the students, even though it is a hard one, and choose Plan A. And just realize your decision is affecting people way more than you know.
I'm going to keep going. Dominique Castillo. Yeah.
So the last ones are all regarding 5 days, from what I understand.
Yes. Hello, my name is Dominique Castillo. I'm a mom of 2, a 3-year-old and 10-year-old, who my 10-year-old used to attend this district until I removed her from the school district this year. I'm a local small business owner, and I've lived here since 1989. I am a 308 alumni. I've been through this district from K through 12. I want to talk really quick about burnout, as that was mentioned, as it touches on my personal life. I withdrew my daughter from the district, making the stressful choice to figure out how to manage running and working full-time in my business and homeschooling my daughter because e-learning did not work for us last year. The hybrid schedule forces many without flexible work schedules to choose remote only purely because the schedule conflicts with their work hours. We do not have the luxury to work from home. Many in-person working families are frustrated by this. A school is meant to be open with interactions with teachers and friends. It's part of the process. I am burning my wick at both ends. I am teaching my daughter.
Can I ask you to please pull up your mask?
If she pulls hers below her chin and y'all stop taking drinks, it all makes sense. As a board who is supposed to work for the parents and students first, I sincerely hope you start to consider this part of the equation, as it's been completely neglected up until this point. Taking this stance is controversial. I understand. I've taken quite the beating from those who choose fear over reason, and my business has even been threatened. Many of our teachers can't speak up due to backlash. I'm not asking you to do something easy. I'm very aware of that. For the kids who need full in-person, you're leaving them out. Hybrid's not a solution, and you know the solution. So I suggest whoever has a driving hand in this mess, because the can keeps getting kicked back and forth, start reaching out to districts who are doing it and doing it better. No single parent should have to choose between physically going to work or going on unemployment because they have to stay home with their child. Yes, that's currently going on.
I'm going to ask you again to return your mask over your nose and mouth, please.
This is currently going on. For parents who have to choose remote only due to their work schedules, who have to choose something that doesn't necessarily work for their child, that's also currently going on. My daughter will not be returning until she can benefit from school, which is 5 full days. Your enrollment is already down, and if a packed plane full of people can eat on that plane, our kids can return to school and eat lunch. We can do better. You are out of time, and we're done hearing excuses why we can't go back. Thank you.
Again, a reminder that in the school buildings, we require masks to be over nose and mouth. This is part of the Illinois State Board of Education requirements for school buildings.
That's what you're worried about?
And as a taxpayer, I just want to make sure all board members are paying attention to all
You guys are talking while she was up there. You were whispering to each other.
I'm going to ask to call to order, please. The next speaker.
Karen Shorbat.
We are writing you today as invested SD308 parents and members of the medical community, a pediatrician, and an emergency medicine physician. We hope you will give careful consideration to our argument for full in-person learning, especially given our expertise in understanding infection prevention, evaluating science of the pandemic, and our professional experiences. Included at the end of this email is also a link to an excellent article that more eloquently restates our argument. After reviewing your priorities for learning options and the pros, cons of expanding in-person instruction in April, we were sadly disappointed to see that there were no points regarding the quality of education. Surely we can all agree that the best way to provide an excellent learning environment and quality education is to have all the students in person. Minimizing health risks for students and staff is already occurring, as evidenced by decreasing rates of local infection and increased vaccine distribution targeting the most vulnerable population and including the district teachers and staff. Most importantly, the rates of transmission in schools have been found to be exceedingly low. See the CDC link at the end of the letter. These studies were actually pre-vaccine and when less people had acquired partial immunity from natural infection. The recommendation made to keep the elementary schedule the same for the rest of the year is unacceptable. They are the youngest and least vulnerable with respect to COVID infection, while also being the least likely to transmit infection, and are likely the most negatively impacted by remote learning, as evidenced by numerous surveys of parents and teachers. The recommendation to change the junior high school to a 7-hour day is also poor. Increasing their remote instruction by 2 hours per day on the days they stay home is not helpful for them. Even worse for the kids that are full remote as their screen time increases from 20 to 30 hours a week. Older children should be in person 5 days as well. And if lunch is too much of a challenge, at least they could have 5-hour days, 5 days a week. School sports have recently restarted, so if kids can play a basketball game and get very close to others during a game, then children, even 30 or more, can sit in a classroom 3 to 6 feet apart with masks and have a full, normal school day. We can no longer use health and safety concerns as an excuse to refrain from full in-person learning. Alternatively, there are numerous health and safety concerns that children are at risk for if they are further forced into unnecessary time at home. These include, but are not limited to, obesity, technology addiction, poor socialization, depression, anxiety, substance use abuse, and in the worst cases, child abuse and suicide. We need to stop acting like the idea of a 5-day school week is some radical notion when indeed it is supposed to be the norm. It also seems unreasonable to decide on March 1 what the new schedule should be on April 7, given the ever-changing COVID situation. Wouldn't it be best to plan for full in-person instruction, given the likelihood that infections should be continuing to decrease and more vulnerable adults will be vaccinated? Then, if that does not happen as expected, we can remain on the current hybrid schedule. Here are some examples of mitigations that can and should be continued. 1, continue to allow parents to choose all remote option if they feel that is best for their family. 2, continuation of mask wearing. 3, desks 6 feet apart when possible. As noted by the CDC, this is not a requirement. Thank you.
Jim Casper.
Hi, I'm Jim Casper. Thank you very much for hosting this. I think it's important that you guys hear sort of the points of view and take into account the needs and wishes of the parents. I have a freshman student at Oswego East. He's a 504, on a 504 plan. And really, he is benefiting greatly from having returned to school and will benefit even more by going back full-time. The CDC has issued guidelines, and among the things the CDC said was that K through 12 schools should be among the last settings to close as a transmission mitigation strategy and should be among the first settings to reopen. Why would they say that? They're saying that because they're following the science, and they realize that, there's obviously risks with COVID, and we all know what those are, but there's risks to not going back to school. And I thought the previous email perfectly stated that those risks, and those are real risks, and they have a lifetime impact on kids potentially. I want to read a quote from the Washington Post. It was an editorial from about a week ago. It said, "The disruption of virtual school is increasing the risk this generation of children will suffer from and die of heart disease and diabetes. It could reduce their lifelong earning potential and cripple their mental health. Forming healthy social and physical habits and promoting a love of learning are vital processes for school-age children that are integrally associated with lower chronic disease burden, higher economic earnings, and increased overall life satisfaction. And every day out of school is taking these things away from the children in our society." Nobody wants to hurt a child at all. And some of us with a longer term view, are seeing that the possible impacts of not being in school are creating just chronic problems that are going to last a lifetime. That's why I'm advocating for 5 days a week school, and you know, I appreciate your consideration of that. Thank you.
Dan Pfaff.
What's keeping our children out of school full-time 5 days a week? The science, money, or influence from OEA on SD308. It's time to expect more. More for our children and more from our district. The district has had a year in which planning could have occurred. Instead, they have decided to wait until the 11th hour to establish a plan. Let's face it, most children staying remote currently will likely be remote in the fall if it is an option. Why can't the district select one teacher per grade level to teach the kids that are remote and have the other teachers teach in-person kids all day? They can have lunch, recess, and specials to give teachers their much-needed plan time so Wednesday's plan will not be necessary. Kids can eat in their classrooms and district will not have to worry about 50 kids in one space problems. It's time to think outside the box and be flexible and creative. It is unacceptable to have, as was stated in the last meeting, Xbox Wednesdays. Half-days are for 3 to 5-year-olds, not school-age children. All we are asking as your constituents is to stand up for what our children need. Thanks, Dan Pfaff.
Sarah H.
So my name is Sarah Honater, but I am here tonight to read a statement authored by Jacqueline Fitzpatrick, and although these are not my original words, I agree with her 100% regarding why full-time in-person learning is essential. Remote learning, hybrid and part-time schooling is inadequate and was only to be a temporary solution during COVID-19. However, School District 308 has put full-time in-person learning off long enough. Remote or hybrid learning plans do not help to meet or exceed the goals and objectives on strategic plans set by educational organizations. The stakeholders are not receiving any benefit by the students in the community attending school at only a fraction of the time recommended by the state of Illinois. It is unethical for school districts to take credit for students attending what is supposed to be full school days and students receiving less than half the instructional hours and content necessary for positive student achievement. This is seen by the increased number of students in the district receiving D's and F's and the greater number of elementary students not obtaining mastery like they were when they could actually attend school full-time. At this point, remote learning provides absolutely no intrinsic or extrinsic motivation for kids to learn and develop in a positive way. If anything, it moves many students further from the end goal of creating individuals who are prepared to attend college or to succeed in careers that positively contribute to their communities after high school. Teachers are working harder than ever. They are expected to do more than they were hired to do. Teachers are expected to do more with less time and with lower expectations for all students. This does not align with the goals on the strategic plan for the school district and ISBE. The first goal of ISBE states, every child will make significant academic gains each year. What are student grades and the data collected in Mastery Connect telling about student performance? How is this data being used to help the students perform better in the future? What is School District 308 going to do to help the students who are underperforming but do not qualify for Title I funding? Many families who do not financially qualify for funding cannot afford summer school or private education. Removing essential curriculum or making coursework easier to allow student grades to remain high will not prepare them for college and beyond. Thank you.
One more. Kara Bates?
I don't have that one.
No,
I have
it's a
Karen
card.
Chorvat.
It's a card.
Oh, person, okay.
Good evening. My name is Cara Bales. I'm here to advocate for our kids for their return to school in person full-time. There are too many reasons to list of the negative impact that remote learning is having on our kids, including lack of quality education, lack of socialization, lack of accountability, rates of depression and anxiety going up, rates of suicide going up among youth, and the list goes on and on. My oldest son, for example, who's in 7th grade, he was an honor roll student last school year, and since remote learning, he's getting D's and F's, with his lowest grade being a 23% in one of his classes. Our 2 elementary school-age children, we had to pull out completely due to how poorly remote learning was going for them. But what I would like to focus my short time on is the safety issues that are being brought up as reasons for not allowing our kids back in person full-time. I'm a family nurse practitioner, and I was working before COVID-19 and have been working throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm here to tell you that COVID is not affecting children the way influenza has affected children in the way of complications or even deaths. We did not shut down schools during the H1N1 influenza pandemic, and all of the science and evidence supports that COVID affects children less in terms of severity and deaths than influenza. Knowing this, parents should be the ones making the decision whether or not to send their children to school full-time, not District 308 making this decision for us. If the board's concerns are only about the children, the science and evidence is there. Children are not as affected by COVID, and there is no need to keep them out of school for this reason. If the concern is for the teachers, then, just as I have worked in person every day of this pandemic with my N95 mask and practicing social distancing, the teachers should be able to safely do the same. My recommendation would be that the teacher stands at the front of the class 6 feet or more away from his or her students with their mask on. That should be safe enough, just as it has been safe enough for me working with COVID-positive patients every day since this pandemic started. I hope the board will make the right decision and bring our kids back to school in person full-time, because the science does not back up their decision to keep them out of school.
I just have this one.
Silva, do you read that?
Chorva?
Sure.
Yeah. This is Karen Chorva.
You had that one already.
We did? Okay, thank you. Really? I apologize, I already read that one. Thank you so much. And there's no more public comment?
Nope.
Okay. Okay. Moving on to item number 3.1 on the agenda, procedures and guidelines for the public forum Q&A session. The Q&A session will follow the following procedures and protocol. Individuals wishing to make a comment or ask a question will be required to fill out a comment card with their name, email, and question so that the board and/or administration can follow up if a question cannot be answered at the meeting. To make the process as efficient as possible, we have asked speakers to submit their comment card to the board secretary prior to the meeting. The board secretary will call each person in the order the card was received. To ensure that all topics get addressed the maximum extent possible after 3 questions on the same topic have been heard, the board president will state that and will direct the board secretary to call the next person that has a question on a different topic. After questions on all topics have been addressed, if time allows, more questions will be taken in the order they were received. We will alternate questions submitted in person and by email. At 9 p.m., the board president will announce the time and that the final question of the meeting has been taken or will take place. When the community members approach the microphone, 1, the person shall then state their name and the topic of their question or comment for the public record. 2, questions and comments will be limited to 2 minutes or less and may be directed at the board in general or to a specific member of the board. 3, if no board member is directly asked to address the question or comment, then any board member may answer or comment, and additional board members who may wish to answer or comment can do so as well. The board member answers will be limited to 2 minutes. If no board member elects to respond to a question, then the president will make a statement on behalf of the board. Questions can be on any topic except for personnel. For example, no questions or comments can be made about any teacher, employee, administrator, or by referencing the district employee's title. If members of the public have any of these types of questions, they should be directed to the building principal or district administration. Thank you.
Cindy Rook.
Hello, my name is Cindy Rook. And I have 2 children in District 308. I have a freshman in high school, and I have a 6th grader over at Trauber Junior High. I do have a question, but before I get to that, I do want to start with just providing a little bit of information, if that's okay. There's over 300 million people in this country, in the United States of America. Less than 250 children have died from coronavirus. I don't know if anyone knew that, but those are the facts. So we've mitigated this risk as a district. You guys have mitigated this risk of death to children very well by providing remote. So parents who are fearful of their children dying in school can send their kids to remote, and I'm sure that they appreciate that. I also want to add, suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death for school-aged children in our country. So you can compare the numbers. 250 out of 300 million, which yes, it's very sad, but it's also minuscule to the number of children that are hurting in this district and around this country from not being in school. So my question is, what have you done? This is my first question. Do I get 3?
You have 2 minutes.
Okay.
And 1 question?
So, okay. Well, then I'm not going to ask you what you've done to mitigate this risk of harm to our children. I'm not going to ask that question. But I am going to ask this question. Why is there currently no plan in place or in the foreseeable future to return our children to 5 days a week back in school? I'll wait. That's my question.
Let me also turn your attention to the front row of the second section where we have our senior leadership available to help answer questions. As you know, we were presented with a next phase plan on this. I think that I can speak for each board member when we've asked a lot of the same questions. In fact, I don't think I've heard one yet that we haven't also, at least 1 or 2 of us, asked at some point in time throughout this last year. At this time, Dr. Sparlin, I'll give it to you to decide which person would best answer.
I was just going to say, I can answer that question. We've been obviously working on the phases, phase 1, phase 2, and now for this evening, what we're talking about, phase 3. Tonight, we have begun the conversations on, what does it look like, 5 days, full days. We're talking about next year, but to be perfectly honest, right now, we're focused on right here and now. And the next year plan is going to be, Faith and I were just talking about this today, the process, who will be involved, when it'll be presented to the Board of Education. But our goal is to get back 5 days in-person learning next year.
Am I allowed to ask a follow-up question?
You got 10 seconds.
Go for it.
Okay. Is the plan for kids to return to school, is there a process for kids to be back in school on the first day of the next school year, 5 days in person? I guess I should say, is the goal?
I mean, I think that's, I guess I don't know how to answer that because I think they're working on that now, as you just heard. I don't know if you have more to add.
That is the goal.
Okay, thank you.
Mark Kaysen is by email.
Okay. No, it's all good. Dr. Sparlin was apologizing for jumping in instead of letting me answer. That was very polite. The remaining 4 questions are via email. Mark Kaysen, I would like to submit a question to the board. What is the school plan for next year? I would push to get kids back to in-person classroom learning 5 days a week, all day with no remote option. By the fall, almost all, if not faculty staff, should be fully vaccinated. In addition, schools that are open now have not shown to be major contributors to community spread. I think that going into the summer, the plan for fall should be for in-person learning. This could be adjusted to a similar program that is going on now if major changes to infection rates warrant. I think the answer to that we just answered, or the question, what is the school plan for next year? We did just answer. With regards to the one comment regarding no remote option, that is a requirement currently followed by every district in Illinois per the ISB guidelines. So we don't have the say in that at this point. That's not under local control. So as far as we know at this moment, we do retain the responsibility to hold a remote option. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
That's the answer.
Shall I just go forward? Okay. This is Melanie McAllister. Hi, School Board of Education. Can the school district somehow switch to the remote learners to a homeschooling program on the computer? It certainly would be cheaper than hiring remote teachers and in-person teachers. Thanks, Melanie McAllister. Dr. Sparlin, I'm going to toss this one to you as to how to answer if it would be cheaper. And
That's a question that we've asked and answered. That's something that we've that we talked about earlier in the year to offer the online version of Edgenuity was the option, and we decided that we, as a collective organization here, decided that that was not the way that we wanted to go this year. Like I said, next year our goal will be to begin the year will be 5 days in person, full days. But that's a question, and that's a piece of the conversation for next year. What does the remote piece look like? Because as Mrs. Doyle just said, currently we are mandated to provide a high quality remote program. And so what does that look like for next year? Again, that is part of the conversation for upcoming.
Does ISB mandate what type of online instruction we do provide, or is that an available option for us to consider next year if ISB still has that ruling in place?
That would be, at this current time, that would be an option, yes.
Can we also pull the data from this year on the difference between online learning and the in-person, especially at the elementary level?
That's an interesting question, because we were talking about state requirements for testing. Faith, is that still required to be only in person?
Yes. The state assessments must be given in person this year.
Do you have some mechanism by which we can utilize some sort of assessment to compare the two different types of learning?
We wouldn't be able to use state assessments. We can look at grades, what that would look like, and Mastery Connect at the elementary version. We would need some more time because students have just started coming in person and what that looks like. But definitely when talking with teachers, that is part of the narrative too of how students do remotely versus in person.
And then when we're talking to teachers, I'd also like to know how it really went, where teachers are teaching both in person and online versus how do we think it would go if we had teachers just doing virtual and teachers just in the classroom.
Okay.
Dominique Castillo, I believe you're here. Did you want to ask your question in person?
Go ahead and read it.
This is from Dominique Castillo. My question I won't have allotted time to ask is, we are being told we can't have both remote and in-person teachers, yet I have heard we are laying off 27. So if this is true, how are we going to do this next year if that is the case, when we're being told we currently don't have enough teachers? It is my understanding this is due to low enrollment. If the new board continues on this path, the enrollment numbers are going to drop even lower. Also, Teacher Claim Union has no role in this, yet I've also been told behind closed doors it is. What is the actual holdup here, and what's the plan as far as addressing my first question? All right, so the first question was, we are being told we can't have both remote and in-person teachers. Yes, I have heard we are laying off 27. So as part of the budget mitigation discussion that we had, we do adjust each year due to enrollment, the number of teachers we need at each grade level. So with the enrollment of students this year, and then there is an allowance, I think, being made for the fact that there has been a slight decrease with homeschool that we expect to see back, much like your daughter. I think that what you're hearing is kind of piecemeal. It's not really that they're being laid off, it's that those aren't needed for expected enrollment. We do each year, as the need arises due to enrollment and registration, recall teachers from that list as they're needed. And those 27, that's through a contracted agreement with our teachers union on how that process works. And they have a committee dedicated to making sure that that is a fair and impartial process. Does that answer your question?
Not really.
What?
Right now they're saying,
Go ahead, if you could come to the mic just so that people from home can hear as well.
right now they're saying we don't have enough teachers.
Who's
So
saying that?
You're hearing it all over. Do you have teachers saying this on Facebook? So
Okay.
my question is, if the plan is to go full-time next year, which I support,
If
I
we can
think
do the
personally,
math. Thank you, I'm sorry.
I'm talking, so it's a little bit difficult. When we have these remote teacher only and in-person only, which I personally think would benefit our teachers to not have them doing it simultaneously, do we have enough teachers to do that?
Faith, I think
I'll-
Dr. Sparlin, you could probably best answer that.
Sure. So at the last board meeting, I brought out the data of if we had our first graders, for instance, if you went through and looked at that, and you kept students within their school, but separated those that were remote by choice and those that would be in person, we would have to hire more teachers because some of the class sizes, as you combined for remote by choice at some schools, for example, would be above the class cap. If you were to start out next school year, which is one of the things that we were considering and had people elect that from the beginning, then you could divvy that out across the district and have, for instance, a teacher that could be remote by choice across a couple of schools and elevate that class size. So we're not saying that there aren't enough teachers if you spread all of that out. There aren't enough current teachers within each school to make sure that we keep our class sizes at what we've guaranteed they would be for both remote by choice and in person.
So this is possible? Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Good. So do you want to do you have, that's pretty much what I'm getting from the rest of your questions
Yeah.
was all in that?
Yeah, I've been told it wasn't possible, so I just wanted to ask you guys directly since.
And I also recommend, I heard you mention something that it saddens me because I wish I could do more about it, but each of us can only do what we can do about getting information to our community members, not just you, but you've mentioned several times, you hear it all over, teachers say it all over Facebook. So I caution that Facebook is not going to be a reliable source of information for
I
school
understand
things.
that, but they're
You know what I
screaming
mean?
it
I know,
at
it's
us.
super
They're
frustrating
screaming it
to
at us
hear
right now.
all the.
I just want the facts, which is why I came here to ask you.
What was that?
I just want the facts, which is why
Yeah,
I
for
came
sure.
to ask you to squash that internet mumbo jumbo that's going around.
Absolutely. Yeah,
It's
I can
dangerous.
understand that.
It's dangerous to sit there and say something like that's not possible when we, in fact, just said that it is. So
Yeah, it
that's
is
the
possible.
answer to my question I was looking for.
Okay.
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you.
I was going to say, a good rule I always use with the internet is when I read something, the first thing I say is, I wonder if that's correct.
I knew it wasn't true, that's why I asked.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next is Jacqueline Fitzpatrick. Student grades and the Mastery Connect data indicate many students are falling behind by not allowing schools to fully open. The students who want and need to be in school full-time are the ones who are suffering the most. Why continue to limit hours of in-person instruction and cater to the needs of the students who choose remote when in the ISB clearly states no amount of technology can replicate the effect of face-to-face interactions and instructions between teachers and students? So the question is, why are we continuing to limit the number of hours of in-person instruction and cater to the needs of students who choose remote? Well, I don't think that the goal is to cater to the needs of any one particular student. I think can you explain how we had done this? We have been prioritizing the balance on the scales between safety and education. And I think that one of the most disheartening things throughout this entire pandemic is watching all of our senior leadership that are in here that have spent their entire careers putting the education and the needs of our children first. All of the things that we know about education and why in-person instruction is so important, these people have spent their lives devoted to understanding and helping that. So creating a pandemic situation is pretty much the worst-case scenario for any educator, I have to imagine, because you know that there's a difference between safety, rules, and reaching the most children possible. So that would be my first answer. Can somebody jump in on the limiting the hours of in-person instruction?
Sure. I perceive that question to be at elementary level with the balance between remote by choice and in person. I'm not sure if that was the intent from the question or not. But what we are wanting to do is make sure that our students and our parents that have chosen in person as well as remote by choice have an equal number of minutes of instruction. I agree that coming in person, I was a former elementary teacher, having those kids in the classroom is ideal, but for some of our parents and our students, that is not something that they are choosing to do right now, so we have to continue to keep the relationship with the teacher and the students and their friends that they've had throughout the year, and make that time very comparable between the two groups to be able to continue with learning.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in on that? Where are we on time?
Yeah.
Okay. So one individual had asked 6 separate questions. As time has allowed, we can continue through these. Dear School Board of Education, can you offer 3 hours of in-person learning on Wednesdays to the kids that are really struggling, running away from computer and crying and/or grades are bad, with remote learning in reading, writing, and math?